Hi, everyone. Next, I'm going to ask Dr. Sanjay Reddy, who's a hospitalist in the Department of Medicine, to join me and introduce our next speaker, Dr. Renee Navarro. Thanks, Sanjay.
It's my pleasure to introduce Chancellor Diversity and Outreach, charged with fostering everyone has an opportunity to excel. Dr. Navarro's plan, Roadmap to Inclusive Excellence. Dr. Navarro is a member of the Chancellor's executive team and works closely with other senior administrators to address issues of diversity that cut across faculty, student, staff, and operational lines and mission areas. After the completion of medical school and residency at UCSF, Dr. Navarro joined the anesthesia faculty in 1990 and is currently a professor of anesthesia and perioperative care. She's held several leadership positions at ZSFG, including acting chief of anesthesia, medical director of perioperative services, and chief of the medical staff. After which she served as the School of Medicine Associate Dean of Academic Affairs, and in 2007, the Campus Director of Academic Diversity. Dr. Navarro currently serves as the chair of the UC Health Science Task Force on Diversity and chair of the AAMC's Group on Diversity and Inclusion. Dr. Navarro's service to the university and the community has been honored by recipient of the Chancellor's Celebration of Women Faculty Award, Chancellor's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Award, Assemblyman Leno Mentors Award, and Mayor Willie Brown's proclamation of Dr. J. Renee Navarro's Day in San Francisco. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Navarro.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Dr. Reddy, for that kind introduction. And let me join in welcoming all of you to this year's Faculty Development Day. It's a pleasure for me to share with you a bit of information about what UCSF is doing to make sure that our campus is one that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive for all members of the campus community. I wanted to just start off by sharing a little bit about the history briefly of UCSF as it relates to diversity, because it's been a continuous equity improvement process over time, and then some of the specific things we're working on as it relates specifically to faculty. The Office of Diversity and Outreach was the inaugural office that is celebrating 10 years come December of this year. But that 10 years really comes after a long history over 50 years ago, dating back to the formation of the Black Caucus and the strike that they went in after the death of Martin Luther King. Moving forward to our campus being the first health science campus under Shane Snowden's leadership to create an LGBT resource center, a women's resource center in the early 80s, followed by our office in 2010 and the development of a multicultural center. Much of this work has happened because of the activism of those members of our campus community. Our students have been very active and engaged, as well as our staff and our faculty, in moving us forward along this trajectory. The foundation for the office is really around issues of equity, that is being, having quality and fairness as for all of members of the campus community, working to make sure that that diverse representation of individual lives and life experiences have opportunities to be included, that they are a part of the fabric of UCSF and they have full access to the breadth of opportunities that exist within our campus and health system. And one describes it as diversity being asked to the party, inclusion being asked to dance. And we add to that really belonging is really dancing as if no one's watching. So you can bring your authentic self to the work and your expertise within our institution. The mission of the ODO is really to build diversity, nurture the culture, and to really make sure that we're engaging in a way that all have a sense of belonging. And we've defined our specific initiatives and strategies in our strategic plan, our roadmap to inclusive excellence, which you can find on our website. But just to highlight a bit of the areas that we're working on, Always Pathway and pipeline programs were integrated into the San Francisco and Alameda School District with MESA programs, Upward Bound program, teaching health and science, and identifying opportunities for first generation underrepresented minorities and others to see their way to opportunities at UCSF. We want to make sure that our hiring processes and our promotions processes have the evidence-based practices that really facilitate equity and would facilitate diversity. Of course, the climate is critically important to retaining individuals in our community and allowing people to thrive. And so we spend a lot of time on nurturing that culture of equity and inclusion. And of course, we have to have accountability. We have to measure what we're doing, and we have to have a certain sense of compliance with some federal and state statutes that relate to equal opportunity, non-discrimination, non-sexual harassment, or sexual violence. Along the lines of the faculty recruitment, we have a team working on advancing excellence in faculty recruitment. And this group consists of our Faculty Equity Advisors program, which we initiated now over 4 years ago. Dr. Elizabeth Ozer serves as the director, and there are senior faculty representing all of the schools who are actively engaged in each and every faculty recruitment. We've identified and support and distribute best practices in the faculty recruitment process. We've defined, and now the campus has adopted, committee composition rules, with all committees being at least 50% female and including underrepresented minorities, that there be some committee training on unconscious bias and how unconscious bias impacts the decision making. Every faculty applicant has to complete contributions to diversity statement as a component of their application. And in that statement, we want to see what you've done in the past and what you're currently doing and what you would do in your role at UCSF in contributing to diversity, equity, and inclusion here. We have a couple of grants that we've received from the Office of the President, as this is a system-wide focus on advancing faculty diversity. One which facilitated the recruitment of 4 ladder rank faculty in the last 2 years for underrepresented minority groups, when typically the ladder rank, it's less than 1 a year that we typically would recruit. Our most current grant is focused on the diversification of leadership positions within departments, such that faculty have opportunities for batter-up positions, where in fact we can influence the diversity across the leadership of our institution. And then having incentives for recruitment, as the Watson Scholars Program has provided. And we also recently had a program for diversification of the basic science faculty, which was very significant and brought us some additional faculty. The additional resources for our having a climate of inclusion includes the work that's done by our resource centers. Our LGBT Resource Center is directed by Clint Jaramillo, and he has launched a number of successful campaigns in building culture, building a sense of community, and then identifying and elevating issues that are critical to communities, including our very successful Pronouns Matter campaign, which has been distributed really across the country. And we're a great model for how we have infused this at UCSF. Similarly, the Multicultural Resource Center has been working to transform our health through our social justice lens and works with our faculty, staff, students to create community, facilitate integration, and the busier, now more than ever on the issues of the day. Our care advocate is directed by Denise Caramagno. Her name fell off. She works to provide a confidential resource to individuals who have experienced interpersonal violence, sexual harassment, sexual assault, and it is a place for those who may not want to file a formal complaint with our Office for the Prevention of Harassment and Discrimination, but want first to talk to someone who can facilitate and help them navigate our system internally or external systems if people choose to do so. Other climate improvement strategies that we've worked on are really to change systems so that we actually develop systems with the intent, with an equity lens as the intent, and then we do the measurement. Committee composition, I talked about the hiring process improvement, our complaint resolution process, and then the ongoing salary equity analysis that we engage in. We also do education and awareness building around issues of unconscious bias, asking each member of our campus community to really start with the work on the individual to understand where your own bias comes from and how that might impact how you make decisions, how you interact with your patients, with learners, and with your colleagues. Staff are such a significant compartment of our campus community, and we've developed a staff certification process because we recognize that climate is local within your divisions and areas, and we've trained over 150 staff members to be DEI leaders and to take that work back to the level of their actually department and division. In addition, we developed the DEI champion training with the Differences Matter initiative that facilitates faculty training across issues of diversity. And then the support for campus committees. My office provides some financial support across 4CI is the Committee on Culture, Climate, and Inclusion that's co-chaired by myself and Provost Dan Lowenstein. But we have committees addressing disability issues, LGBT, status of women, Black Caucus, Asian Pacific, Chicano, Latino. So there are a variety of committees that we support. And with that, we measure how is the climate for members of our campus community. The last climate survey for faculty was carried out in 2017, but after an extensive review, the Climate Task Force report was released in 2019. And we're happy to see that the majority of our faculty are satisfied or very satisfied with being at UCSF, and it's particularly the intellectual stimulation, the collaboration, the ability to work in education, training, and research being quite important to them. 66% of our faculty say they have informal or formal mentors, and that is really positively correlated with satisfaction and aligned with our faculty mentoring program that Dr. Mitch Feldman runs. 60% believe that the climate is good at all levels for women versus 80% who believe that the climate is good at all levels for men. 33% of the faculty say that the underrepresented minority faculty face unequal treatment at every level, but 10% only versus 10% of the non-underrepresented minority. So there is a little bit of difference there in the inequities that creep into our system, like all systems in the United States as it relates to structural issues of structural racism. 36% of our white faculty, 37% of the Asian faculty believe that we effectively promote a climate free of racial and ethnic discrimination versus only 23% of our underrepresented minority faculty. So we have some opportunities for improvement there. Just a quick snapshot of the data. 2010, when the office was started, we see that women were 44% of the faculty overall across all the schools. We're now at parity, 50-50 in 2018. I think we hit that mark in the 2016 academic year. But when we look by school, you can see the various schools here. Dentistry, School of Medicine's at 50%. School of Nursing is obviously majority female, and that majority has increased, and we're looking to increase the underrepresented male faculty within the School of Nursing, and similarly in the School of Pharmacy, it's like majority of female faculty there as well. By race ethnicity, you can see our trends over time that in fact there have been some increases in underrepresented minority faculty. Asian, Native American, Native Hawaiian numbers remain less than 1%, but we've had a small increase in Black faculty, in Latinx faculty, a substantial increase in the Asian faculty population over the course of those years represented here. Similarly, you can see the distribution by school, and we'll have these slides available so you can see in more detail. And they are also available on the Office of Diversity and Outreach's our website. So you can go in and look at those data there as well. But we have had gains in underrepresented minority groups in dentistry, similarly in medicine, similarly in pharmacy has remained flat for Blacks, increase for Hispanics. School of Nursing has had a decrease in African American faculty, but a significant increase in Hispanic faculty, and you can see the other numbers distributed here. There is some work now looking at the distribution of faculty by race across the academic series. And as you might imagine, the Health Science Clinical Series is the largest series and is the most diverse series, both Health Science Clinical and Adjunct. And so we're looking at some recommendations around system-wide for sort of changes to the composition of the academic senate as it relates to fully including all faculty, like we do here at UCSF. But from this 2019 snapshot, we have 108 Black faculty out of this 3,261. There are 108 Black faculty, 175 Hispanic faculty, and 10 Native American, Alaskan Native faculty. So you can imagine the kinds of issues related to isolation and lack of a critical mass that faculty in those underrepresented groups may experience here. In addition, we have some new imperatives that we are actively dealing with, one being COVID and its impact on our ability to do our work, both in patient care research and teaching being all changed since March. And so how do we recover? And we've identified and written some specific rules around an equitable recovery from COVID, which include addressing the impact during the academic review and addressing that up front. Developing a COVID disaster relief fund to help those members of our campus and health system community who are financially most likely impacted by this disaster, and to look at how we can best support working families through our YMCA learning camps, the continuation of our child care centers. Even in March, when everything else shut down, we were able to continue, although in a reduced capacity because of the distancing issues, but to continue to do that work and to try to provide and be responsive to the needs of our campus community, specifically the needs of our faculty with their family needs and their other dependent care needs. And that's an ongoing initiative that we have an active group engaged in continuing to do that work now. And the coronavirus website can share more about those activities. The imperative also is around how we're responding to Black Lives Matter. At UCSF, we had an outpouring from our staff, from our learners, from our affiliates, including Fresno, and from faculty around how we need to respond as an institution to institutional racism, to Black Lives Matter. The administration received well over 19 letters, demands for change within UCSF, and police violence being at the top of most of the lists of letters that we received. There's some requests that we have some foundational baseline training for all members of our campus community so we can have a common language that relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, healing and wellness being a really important component. And then across our mission area, how do we think about anti-racism specifically, and what kind of accountability and community engagement and community resources should we be providing for our local community as well as our internal communities. So the Office of Diversity and Outreach, we created a weekly, starting weekly, now monthly, newsletter, Matter is the Minimum, as a way to continuously communicate with our campus community around the number of resources that we were curating as individuals really sought to learn more about issues of structural racism, what they could do as individuals to start to dismantle some of these challenges. And we also launched a webinar series with Dante King, and we've held 2 of the 4 within this series, and those tapes are available as well. We want people to understand that what we're talking about is racism and not race. Race is a social construct. However, in this country, certainly race has been used as a proxy for the implementation of biased policies, practices, and procedures, and the racism really impacts all aspects of education, of healthcare, of housing, of the criminal justice system. And we recognize at UCSF that our educational system and our healthcare system, as well as our research enterprise, are all party to issues of structural racism. So when we talk about then what is anti-racism, we're talking about taking individual responsibility and action. So to be an anti-racist is to really be intentional in acts that work to dismantle policies and procedures that, intentional or unintentional, have a disparate and an unequal impact on groups and on individuals. And so we've adopted this language by Dr. Kinde, really looking at activism as it's really active as a verb, and not to just say that I'm not racist, because silence is complicit with the status quo, and the status quo we know is has inequities that are built into the system against women, certainly against certain races, and African American. The particular anti-Black sentiments run deep within the United States structure. So when we think about what would be a comprehensive initiative, it's really across all the spheres of our institution as it relates to education, training, patient care, even our community involvement. And we've embarked upon a specific anti-racism initiative at UCSF. The Safety Task Force on Security and Policing was one of the first task forces stood up by the Chancellor. It's co-chaired by myself and Provost Lowenstein. We are developing a mandatory foundational education and training for all members of our campus community, faculty, learners, and staff. Anti-racism parts of the curriculum, anti-oppression curricula are being developed at all of the schools and within the graduate division. And then we're taking the lessons learned from our faculty equity advisors and moving that to the staff equity advising process as well. Anchor institution with our community, and then looking at how race specifically has been used in medicine as a way for us to better sort of dismantle, for example, the glomerular filtration rate by race or pulmonary function tests. So we'll be examining that as well, and research diversity initiatives also. So those are the things that we're working on at UCSF. It is all consistent with our values and our values of pride and professionalism, respecting each other, our integrity, diversity, and excellence really forms the foundation of who we are and who we aspire to be as an institution. And, you know, it's a great institution that is continually examining where we are and who we are and how we can work to do things in a more inclusive and equitable way. Here's a snapshot of my team. It's an old snapshot of my team, but we're here as a resource to all the members of our campus community. And with that, I welcome you again, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you to really facilitate what you're trying to accomplish here at UCSF. So I thank you, and I will stop sharing at this point, and be open for some questions if we have time.
Hi, Dr. Navarro. Thank you. That was wonderful. We do have a question, and please, everyone else who's on, please post any questions you have. And this is a question that I think is a common one for a lot of people, and it's many underrepresented in medicine faculty experience a minority tax in which they feel or are asked to dedicate a substantial amount of their time to DEI-related initiatives, which can take time away from promotion, advancement, earning activities. So what are we doing to appropriately recognize those valuable contributions and support their promotion and advancement?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And we've approached it in two ways. The first way is that in the advancement and promotions process, contributions to diversity have been included as one of the metrics through which we measure a person's service to the institution. So changing our evaluation process to recognize and honor those contributions as being a significant contribution to the work that you're doing. The second is to identify and to actually compensate people who are doing this work as part of their professional career. Each of the departments have identified a departmental diversity leader, usually at the vice chair level. Some are at vice chair level, some are at a director's level, but they are actually compensated in the time that they receive in order to conduct DEI activities in the departments. And additionally, the School of Medicine's Dean's Office, certainly through the Differences Matter initiative, has further compensated individuals for doing this work. The equity advisors receive some stipend compensation. I mean, we recognize that this is critical to the mission of UCSF, and we are increasingly recognizing the need to incorporate it into people's work and to compensate people for this critical work.
Excellent, thank you. And then there's another question about the lapel buttons we have that say we welcome all races, all religions, and so on. But is there any that say I welcome to communicate one's individual allyship?
Oh, that's a very interesting point. We don't have a particular a slide or anything that says I welcome, but I think that's an opportunity for someone to take this graphic and make it their own. We certainly hope that people imbibe this and take it on as who they are. We have done some very specific allyship training so that individuals can feel more comfortable working with and speaking not for, but with underrepresented and marginalized communities as a true ally to the work that we're trying to accomplish for all of us.
And then I have a question that I've noticed with a lot of faculty who end up doing DEI work is that they feel this huge pressure to take on the entire monster that is biases and racism and sexism. And sometimes that can be daunting. Do you have recommendations on how to get started, or for people who are interested without being overwhelmed?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great question, and one that I actually deal with in my own sort of sphere as, you know, how do you tackle this big behemoth of work? I mean, if you look at the United States, you know, 400 years since slavery, I think you have to recognize that this is a marathon, not a sprint. So you have to carve out what is within your capacity to really work on and change, and where you need to collaborate and where you need to sort of put in a parking lot for other folks to deal with. And so I work with each of the department diversity leaders. I bring them together collectively so we can think, you know, and share and leverage the work across the institution. So here are the system, you know, the campus-wide, enterprise-wide, you know, goals. Here's where we have resources to facilitate the work you're doing. Here are you know, there's a peer group of individuals who have also been thinking about these things and how they've defined their scope of work. It is critically important to really define the scope of work because it can be overwhelming. And sometimes you want to start small and get some quick wins. I often look at pain points, you know, where are the particular pain point areas, and, you know, our goal is to prevent people from suffering and experiencing harm as a result of these inequities. And so that's often how I approach these various areas. And for me also, the various campus communities can articulate and then prioritize the issues for what are the issues specifically for the LGBT community, what are the issues for those who have disability issues, and have them bring and elevate those things so that we can think about an approach that is strategic in dealing with this process, but mapping it out over the long term.
Excellent, thank you. And Dr. Navarro, thank you so much for sharing all your expertise and for all of the amazing work that you do. And thanks for joining us today on Faculty Development Day. For everyone else, this closes out our morning sessions. Please log back in at 1 p.m. for tips from the department chair session, and you're logged back with the same link as you used for this morning. So thank you very much. And Dr. Navarro, thank you again. It was so wonderful having you.
Thanks. Take care.